Is it safe to say you're a believer in this set?
I've literally gone from Scully to Mulder. I've gone from Lego X-Files skeptic to 100% believer. Hey Lego fans, my name's Graham. I'm here with my Blocks buddy Daniel. We're going to be talking about all of the new Lego ideas sets that have been announced recently. It feels like it's been an onslaught of Lego ideas. There's so many cool things in the pipeline. So we're going to talk about the X-Files, Tintin, Godzilla, and Wallace and Gromit, and just give our reaction to the news, take a look at the fan designs and see what we think about these. It's a really exciting time to be a Lego Ideas fan.
Now, Graham, if I remember correctly, you're a fan of the X-Files. This was something that was a big deal for you.
It's such a funny one, right? So Brent Waller's The X-Files is one of the winners of the 1990s competition. So it's now in the pipeline to become an official Lego set. And when we started working on Blocks magazine, one of the first things that I wrote for the magazine was about Brent Waller's Lego Ideas X-Files submission, because he has been diligently trying to get this thing done for a decade now. He had specially printed minifigures of Mulder and Scully made, and he got them to Gillian Anderson, who took a photo with them. He has been passionately campaigning for this thing. Personally, though, at the time, I kind of felt like I love the X-Files. It's like my favorite television series ever. But I don't need a Lego set of it. Was my vibe. I just didn't think I needed that necessarily for that particular show. However, now I've seen what he has built and the way he has captured the sci-fi paranormal aspects of it with the UFO and the alien in the forest, that captures the X-Files down to a T. And then having Mulder's office underneath it, like this iconic location from the show, this is perfection. This is just such a beautiful Lego model. And the idea that the finished design will look anywhere close to this, I'm fully in for it. I'm there. This is one of those sets that the second it turns up, I'm going to be ripping the box open and getting straight into it. There's going to be no waiting.
So is it safe to say you're a believer now in this set, Graham?
Yeah, that's it. I've literally gone from Scully to Mulder. I've gone from like Lego X-Files skeptic to 100% believer.
I don't know anything about the X-Files. I probably shouldn't admit that, but I do know that I want to believe is like the tagline. So there you go. That's my one. That's all I can contribute on this discussion.
All you need to know is that the X-Files was 9 seasons and a movie. If anyone wants to argue that one with me, go at it in the comments, because there's definitely only 9 seasons of the X-Files. That's just true.
And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe for more controversial opinions from Graham and I when we get together and talk all things Lego in the future.
Luckily, that one's not too controversial. But I think the minifigure selection that Brent has chosen for this is really nice, because he's got Mulder and Scully, obviously David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson's key characters. Then he's also got assistant director Skinner, who was a really integral character throughout the show. And really interestingly, he's got a character who's the nemesis of Mulder and Scully, the cigarette smoking man. But of course, because of kind of restrictions on what you can depict in a Lego Ideas model, the cigarette smoking man doesn't have a cigarette. So it will be really interesting to see how they kind of handle that in the final model, or whether it's a character that they just choose to drop from it, because, visually, he is just an old guy in a suit. So he's not necessarily the most interesting character visually, but his actions in the show and everything are really consequential. So,
hey, well, maybe they're softening up on that though, because in Piece by Piece, they had Snoop Dogg in there with kind of breaking the ceiling there for smoking in a Lego product.
And I think it was in the Daily Bugle, the Marvel set, they had like Jonah Jameson's bottle of whiskey in there. So I think now we're into the 18+ era of Lego sets. Maybe there's more scope to depict these things that in the past we've not been able to have in official models. I think the key thing that I'd really like from the finished version of this is just for it to capture this same vibe, where it's just got that spooky paranormal feeling, just every aspect of the show distilled into one package. This isn't the only iconic franchise, though, that Lego Ideas has announced a new set for recently. We've also got Tintin on the way. And Daniel, this is something that you're way more into than I am. So what's your reaction to a Lego Tintin set getting through Ideas?
Yeah, so honestly, there was kind of 2 reactions. The first was honestly surprise. Like, is Tintin still really a thing? Because I got very into the books. So there were these beautiful big books that were compilations of the various comic strips because they were written kind of serialized, where over a period of months, because they appeared in individual newspapers and such at first. So they've been compiled into these kind of anthologies covering each of the different adventures. Tintin goes here, Tintin does this. And there were a bunch of them, and they, beautifully illustrated and adventure and all of that. So I loved them as a kid. Checked them out from the library regularly. But I was even then, and at that point, they were not being actively written in the '90s, and even
Yeah.
then, I was the only one of my friends that had ever heard of Tintin or knew anything or was into the books in any way, shape, or form. Um, so the fact that this was able to garner enough support, maybe again, I'm in the U.S., so and I know the author. I believe it's pronounced. I always pronounce it Hergy. Maybe murdering the pronunciation there, but I believe he was from Belgium. So maybe it's more popular over there. This definitely seems, and I'm sure we'll get into it with Wallace and Gromit, like kind of cool that this round of ideas seems to be a little more European centric. It feels like a lot of these oh, here's this franchise I loved as a kid or as a young adult. Let's make it into a Lego Ideas submission. Have been largely kind of US based properties, The Office, Friends, Ghostbusters, Transformers, all of this stuff. So kind of cool that go into the other side of the pond. But my second reaction after getting up with the surprise was sheer delight. I very much enjoyed Tintin. I'm really hoping that they'll do kind of the thing that they've been doing with ideas sets of, kind of make a selection of the key characters into minifigures, Captain Haddock, Tintin, Professor Calculus, maybe a couple of the iconic villains. It'd be very cool to get those in minifigure form. It'll be a little bit interesting how they go with this one. This is the iconic storyline, which was actually kind of a two-part story, which was kind of rare for the Tintin franchise, of when they go to the moon. So this was written, before the moon landings. And so this is kind of the quintessential Tintin story with the iconic checkered red and white rocket. It's very fun. I that was my favorite one. So again, this is my favorite subject matter from the series. So closely followed by the cool submarine, Red Rackham's Treasure. I'll be curious to see what they do with the minifigures on this one, because in the book, they appear in kind of these kind of classic sci-fi spacesuits, which are orange with this bulbous. They would look really cool in minifigure form, but it'd kind of also be a shame to not get the kind of classic, reporter Tintin and Captain Haddock and his, sailor cap and his blue cardigan and all of that. Like, they got to do that.
Because you're one chance to get Tintin minifigures. You want the classic, iconic look for them, for sure.
Yeah. So I'll be very curious to see what they do with this. The model here, it's kind of obviously not anywhere close to minifigure scale. It would have to be, 3 feet tall for it to be that. So it kind of seems like that might be the way they would go. Maybe make the rocket as kind of like a display on your desk type of set, and then have the assortment of minifigures with maybe a specialized stand, to set in front of it or something like that. So, but yeah. Again, I'm surprised, but delighted, and we'll be curious to see, if maybe it's a little more popular in Europe, where I would imagine these stories have a little bit more of a fan base, just by sheer proximity and the fact that there would have been people there that could have, seen them growing up. Though I think at this point it would mostly be our parents who saw them growing up.
It feels like it's that era, but I think that's something interesting about this selection of idea sets that have all been announced within the same week of one another. You've got like a very American television show. Mm-hmm. You've got something very British, and you've got this that's got like a real Northern European flavor. And then obviously we're going to talk shortly about Godzilla, which obviously has got a Japanese origin. So it does feel like it's catering for kind of whatever part of the world your tastes relate to, or the things originate from. Lego has got you covered. But for this Tintin space rocket, we need to give a shout out to Alexis dos Santos, who's the designer of the fan designer of the model, and obviously has pushed this through and gathered all the support and made sure that now fans are going to be able to get their very own Tintin set. And by the way, we're expecting all of these to come out probably at some point in 2026. You might find that one or two of them get pushed to early 2027. That's just us speculating based on when idea sets have traditionally been released following their announcements. But if you want to stay up to date on everything that's going on in LEGO Ideas, including interviews on the latest LEGO Ideas sets, news about LEGO Ideas, reviews of the sets, and all of the other great LEGO goings on that there are, then go over to blocksmag.com and take a look at Blocks Magazine. We've got our latest issue, issue 129, available now with Sherlock Holmes on the cover. And you can buy single issues, you can take out a subscription, have a look, see what the magazine's all about, and maybe give us a try. So the next of these idea sets that we'll talk about is Godzilla, the quintessential terrifying movie monster that everybody thinks of when you think of the big monster coming to destroy the city. And this one was by LEGO Ideas user Matt E720. And this one went the traditional route, 10,000 votes, approved in the review process, and now it's going to be an official LEGO set.
Kind of the similar response. Maybe a little bit of less surprise than with Tintin. Obviously, Godzilla still has had, very recently, still in the MonsterVerse, the Godzilla versus Kong movie. So much more still part of the cultural zeitgeist, both I would imagine in Japan, where he originated, and then also, kind of thanks to Hollywood popularity, making him something more that people outside of Japan would know about. So what I really like about this model, and what I'm excited to see with how they translate it into the set, is this is going to be a big brick built creature. And that's just not something we get all that often. Like, obviously we've kept getting bigger and bigger mechs, right? Ninjago, they seem to get bigger. And then you had Monkey Kid, and then, mechs have just shown up all over the place, and they just keep ratcheting up, bigger and bigger. But brick built creatures have really been almost the exclusive domain of Creator. Which there just aren't, there's a limit to how much someone is going to spend on a Creator set, right? It feels like most of the creatures and animals that they do, which are spectacular, don't get me wrong, but there's a limit in size because of the price point. People just aren't going to spend the same amount on a Creator set that they will on a licensed Star Wars set, or Jurassic Park, or something from a more from a known franchise.
Jurassic Park is the last thing I can think of that actually is kind of anything on this scale, like that massive T-Rex that they did with Jurassic Park gates.
You stole my next line. So that is to say, I think the closest analog we have to this is that big Jurassic Park set, which came with the big gate, and that was that brick-built Tyrannosaurus Rex. That was awesome. I mean, he was huge. And just really interesting how they got the texture and the shape of the organic body part. So I'm very curious to see what this looks like. It's obviously a very different physique of this creature. The Tyrannosaurus Rex is kind of long and skinny, where Godzilla is just bulky, right? He's got this kind of big barrel chest, and he's squatty with these enormous legs and huge tail. So I'm really curious to see kind of what a professional Lego designer will do when given the opportunity to make a brick built creature that is this big. And then I'm also curious, like, will they introduce, it's kind of that Godzilla, other than his size, the iconic thing is his breath, right? His atomic breath. So I'm going to be curious to see if maybe there's like a electrical element to this, where they'll kind of introduce one of those light bricks to try to mimic that, or if they, and you can see it here, like there would be, with just the shape of him, you could hide something that would kind of have like a projection feature to it in the neck and in the back of the kind of shoulders there. So I'll be curious to see kind of what other nods they do. And then the other thing that I'm really interested to see with this one is, do they include minifigures? Because Godzilla has appeared over so many years and across so many franchises, it doesn't feel like there's a iconic human cast that goes along with him. It's not like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something like that, right? Where you've always got these, this set of supporting characters. Yeah, and then will they include any sort of surrounding environment, right? Godzilla, with like obviously the
semi-demolished building would be
right. Yeah, it feels like there's got to be at least a little cityscape or something that he can stomp through, or some debris on the ground or something like that. So yeah, this one is cool just because it feels like it's so wide open. And that's the thing I'm really looking forward to with this one, is just kind of see what do they do with it. There's a little, feels like a little more freedom than some, when it's just based on like characters, or like Tintin, right? There's only one way to really depict that rocket. Whereas with here, there's a lot of different ways they could go with it, which could be interesting.
If you want to stay up to date on all of the latest Lego sets and find out when new Lego sets are coming out as soon as they're announced, go to blocksmag.com/go/newsletter. That's in the description. You can click on the link down there and you can sign up to the Blocks newsletter. And every single time there's a new set announcement, we will send it straight to your inbox. So you'll be the first to know about all of the latest Lego goings on. And, you can be the one to tell your friends on social media because you found out first. Speaking of new Lego sets that are on the way, Wallace and Gromit was the other winning set in the 1990s competition that was run on the LEGO Ideas platform. So this one's by LEGO Ideas user Pidelium, and it is a depiction of the claymation characters Wallace and Gromit. To what extent have these guys translated over to the US, Daniel? Is it a particularly known franchise over there, or?
So I have to speak primarily from my own experience, but the degree of my knowledge of this can be summed up in one question that I have to ask: which one is Wallace and which one is Gromit?
So Wallace is the guy, and he's like this crazy inventor who's always coming up with wacky contraptions and things. And Gromit is the dog, and Gromit is like Wallace's long-suffering partner. He's like constantly having to deal with all the wacky shenanigans that Wallace gets them into. And it's usually Gromit who's kind of cleaning up the mess. And it's usually Gromit who really knows what's going on, whilst Wallace just kind of cluelessly bumbles through these different escapades that they get themselves stuck into. And it's like really quintessential British humor in the show. Like it's very traditional British comedy and delivered through claymation, stop motion, and so on. So it really kind of lends itself to that. The style of comedy and the style of animation really blend together in quite a nice way that has made it like this really beloved set of characters. And they had their first new movie that the BBC and Netflix did. I think it was last Christmas, and it was the first thing they'd done with the characters for years. So yeah, people were kind of really excited about that. And it was a really big deal when that launched. So,
yeah, I'm sure it's available over here, on some streaming service, but I have never encountered it. So if it's popular in any way over here, it's eluded me.
I think the thing that's incredible about this design is just how well the organic characters have been captured in Lego bricks. Because, like I say, this is claymation, so they can sculpt these characters for the movies however they want them to be. They can make them and mold them and finesse them, but obviously with Lego bricks you've got the limitation of the system to get these really curved organic characters, and I think we can see some new parts in there that the fan designer has created to make sure that they get the shape of Wallace's mouth. So
yeah, I know nothing about the subject matter, but when this image came out, I immediately zoomed in on the mouth because I was like, wow, that's quite an angle. Like the double curve, and it comes in kind of the curve feels it's like at a 45-degree angle. So I will not claim, and if anyone can point me to the piece, please let us know in the comments. But I don't think that's a part that exists. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see if they, craft something new. They have done that for ideas in the past, but I looked up a picture of, you said it was Wallace, right?
Yeah.
So tried to find a image of the face to see like what it looked like. I was like, oh, that's pretty accurate. But yeah, it definitely feels like maybe some Photoshop or some sort of element design program was used to capture that. So it'll be interesting to see what the official Lego designer does, whether they create a new part or try to use existing system elements.
Because either way, it's fascinating, isn't it? Like either they create that new part and we're like, oh, what's this shiny new thing? Or it's like, wow, that is clever. How on earth did you get those angles with the system?
Yeah.
But I think the nice thing about this model is that you don't necessarily feel like you need minifigures with this one. I know there will be a whole contingent of people out there who really want their Wallace and Gromit minifigures. But my feeling is if you're delivering two characters as well as they are in this fan design, that's all you need. That is a solid Lego set. And we can be happy with that.
Nice. Yeah. And like we said earlier, kind of cool that it seems like this has kind of covered lots of different parts of the world, right? Kind of these characters that are beloved in different areas and certainly have had, wider exposure, but that there's ones that different groups of people will recognize and be excited about is kind of a cool aspect of this latest round of Lego ideas with these four different pieces.
It's just amazing how much keeps coming from this theme, and I can't wait. Like we've said throughout this conversation, I can't wait to see what the final official versions of these fan designs come out like, because the Lego Ideas team, like if you think of minifigure vending machine, they have a habit of surprising and delighting us by going that extra mile to put something new in between here and there.